Hello everybody, Coach Fury here today, back on the channel again today with another different kind of episode really. Today we're not going to be doing any managing or any general managing of a team in Draft Day Sports Pro Basketball 20, but I thought I'd put together a new kind of series, and this is the first one of it, to look at some different scenarios really, to kind of play with the historic ability that Draft Day Sports Pro Basketball 20 has. And we're going to look at some different points in history and just see, essentially what if something had changed that had been different, what the impact it possibly could have had. And we're going to try and simulate that obviously through the game. So today we are going in for our first episode into probably one of the biggest questions that anyone who's a Detroit Pistons fan has, and then a lot of people around who just watch the NBA around the early 2000s will have had as well. For those of you who are not familiar with this point in time, the Detroit Pistons were one of the premier franchises in terms of wins, looking like they were going, winning titles, possibly a dynasty. Some people were saying, had a really, really strong team led by the likes of Chauncey Billups, Richard Hamilton, Tyshawn Prince, Ben Wallace, and then eventually in this era they traded to get Rasheed Wallace, which we've got here. But one of the biggest questions that the franchise faced, and the franchises, people have wondered ever since this moment in time, around the 2003 era, was that the Pistons had the second pick in the draft, and they picked a foreign international player called Darko Milicic, who at the time some people were saying, possibly could become the next Kevin Garnett, the next Tim Duncan, was some people were referencing, a really good, strong centre forward player. Similar, at this moment in time, you got to think that Dirk Nowitzki had come into the league and made such a splash, and it was a flavour of the time. People were sort of thinking international players were going to come in and set the world alight. Unfortunately, for those of you who follow the NBA, know that Darko Milicic never kind of lived up to the hype of being the second pick in the draft. But the question that really stays with the Detroit Pistons franchise is because the draft that he was in was absolutely stacked with talent. So let's have a quick look at that. If we can find the draft information. Here we go. And so we're obviously looking at the 2003 draft. So this was the LeBron James draft. Everyone knows who LeBron James is, arguably one of the greatest players of all time in basketball. But, Darko Milicic was taken second by Detroit. And then let me just list the names who came after him, okay? So Carmelo Anthony, Hall of Famer. Chris Bosh, probably going to be a Hall of Famer. Dwayne Wade, again, probably going to be a Hall of Famer. Real elite talent that was taken just after him in this draft. So the question that we're going to try and pose ourselves today in our what if is what if the Detroit Pistons had not taken Darko Milicic, but instead had taken Carmelo Anthony. At the time, Carmelo Anthony was seen as possibly going to become a real premier small forward, scoring wing. Looked like he was going to be a real talent coming out of Syracuse. So we're going to just simply replicate that. So what we've done is we've set the league up as is for that era. And obviously you can see Darko Milicic is currently on the Detroit Pistons at the moment, but we're going to trade him off using the commissioner privileges that the game allows you to do, and we're going to just basically swap him for Carmelo Anthony. So unfortunately, I'm sorry Denver fans, you're going to have Darko Milicic, and we're going to have a little look and basically see that. Another couple of things that I've done just for setup purposes is I've traded Rasheed Wallace already to the Pistons. I think he was traded about 40 games in at this season. You can see how I completed a couple of, basically tried to replicate the actual trade that happened, which was a three-way deal between the Boston Celtics and the Atlanta Hawks at the time. I think I had to move, so basically doing two different trades because you can't do three-team trades in this Draft Day Sports Pro Basketball. So let's go to it. Let's get the trade done. So we're going to log in as commissioner, and we're going to go to trade the player. Find the Pistons. We're going to find the Denver Nuggets, and Darko Milicic is going to go to the Denver Nuggets, and Carmelo Anthony is going to come over to the Detroit Pistons in a straight swap, and we'll see how that looks. So as I sort of said at the beginning, we're not going to coach, GM any team in this Let's Play. in this series of what ifs. We're just posing questions about what if something could happen slightly different in history, and what impact it may have had on the league or on the franchise in question. So here's the roster for the Detroit Pistons at the time. So pretty stacked roster, really. I mean, we talked about Chauncey Billups, Richard Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, Rasheed Wallace, Ben Wallace. So they had a really strong starting five. You can see basically they've added Carmelo Anthony to it, so not too bad, really. We're not going to obviously manage them, as I said, but we'll have a quick look at the depth chart. And what we're going to do is I'm going to, off camera, just run the season through so you don't have to sit there and watch it load. And then we'll come back at each season and we'll look and see how the Pistons have done in terms of performance. And we'll have a look and see how Darko Milicic has done on Denver, because the other question that we pose for this is, whilst we're focusing on the Pistons and what if Carmelo Anthony, basically helped them sort of go from a strong team for several years to possibly a dynasty, we don't know. What if Darko Milicic had gone to a different team where he wasn't behind Rasheed Wallace and Ben Wallace, two real all-star type players at that moment in time? If he'd gone to a team where he maybe possibly could have started, we'll see how that looks. And we're going to follow this season by season, either until Carmelo Anthony retires or until he gets traded by the AI from the Detroit Pistons, or he signs in a new franchise in free agency once his rookie deal ends. So that's how we're going to do it. Let's have a quick look and see how the AI is shaping up the Pistons. So they've gone straight away and actually thrown Carmelo Anthony in as a starter, which is interesting because I think possibly if this had happened at the time, I'd probably argue that Prince probably would have stayed as the starting small forward because he linked up so well with that starting five. But interesting, the AI has just gone and sort of said, no, Carmelo Anthony's going to play 34 minutes as a rookie. He's going to play small forward and shooting guard. And I mean, that is a pretty awesome lineup. We've got the likes of Billups, Hamilton, two good point guards and a shooting guard. Rasheed Wallace was he was a temperamental character at the time. I mean, when wasn't he? But he still was a really good power forward. And then you've obviously got Ben Wallace, who was just a defensive monster at this time. So interesting to see that he's gone in there. What strategy is the AI going to be running for this team? Okay, so they've gone to a balanced formation in terms of offensive strategy. So not necessarily focusing on anything in particular, it looks like, but trying to mix it up, which is probably the right approach. They've got good scoring all across the team, really. In the post, in Rasheed Wallace, Rip Hamilton was a 20-point a game shooting guard at this time, and you've obviously added Carmelo Anthony, who is a really good scorer at this moment in time as well. In terms of defense, I guess it's no surprise they've gone for an attack defense, which basically means that they're going to attack the perimeter, stop 3-point shots, but allow people to get to the interior because they've got Ben Wallace in there who can basically guard the paint on his own at this moment in time. So there we are. That's the setup. I'm going to basically stop this now. We're going to run the sim and we'll see what happens when we get possibly towards the end of the season. I might stop it at the playoffs. I might sim right the way through and see how the Pistons are getting on, whether they do come out on top and Carmelo Anthony is making a real improvement to this team. So we'll see you guys in a sec. Okay, season 1 is in the books. Let's go and have a look. Right, okay. So I guess the first thing we'll do before we look at the Pistons themselves is I said we would go back and we'd have a look at Darko Milicic's season as well. So let's go and do that first, I think. So how did the Denver Nuggets get on? How did they get on? Let's go and have a look at the standings. So let's go and find the Nuggets. So they finished 32-50. In terms of the Nuggets, so they didn't make the playoffs. In terms of Darko Milicic, let's see how he got on. So it looks like he hasn't played too many minutes. He's only averaging 4.2 points per game, 1.9 rebounds, and not much else to really talk about. In terms of the games, he only actually played 29 games for the Nuggets, it looks like, and he got sent down to the D-League for a considerable amount of time as well. His shooting numbers are not too bad actually for a centre. But it looks like he well and truly is probably going to be a bust as well in this league as well. So it looks like the Nuggets, he couldn't manage to knock out the likes of Nene and Marcus Camby, two pretty dominant centres at the time, out of the rotation. So it's a bit of time in the D-League and not much really to sing about for him. So let's go back to the Pistons. The bit that we really questioning in terms of the what if. So I guess the immediate thing that I can see right away is that the Pistons must have made a trade in the season. So let's go and have a little look at that. In transaction history. Let's have a look. So that was our Carmelo Anthony trade. Looks like they picked up Colin Slater as a free agent. Okay. And it looks like they made a deadline day move. They sent away Tayshaun Prince, who was quite fundamental in terms of the Pistons' run at this era, for Rafa Alston and a second round pick. So that probably confirms they were pretty happy with Carmelo Anthony in that they basically moved what was their starting small forward at the time out of the rotation, out of the roster, completely to the Miami Heat. So let's have a little look at how Carmelo Anthony's actually been doing. So in terms of the rookie numbers, he's second in terms of scoring, just behind LeBron James. He's averaging 21 points, so pretty good rookie season. 2.3 assists, 5 rebounds, about a steal and a half a block. So I'm assuming he's played quite considerable minutes. Yep, it looks like he's averaging 30 minutes. He's started a lot of games, 75 in total. His shooting numbers are pretty solid, 47%. Looking not too bad. Hasn't got the 3-point range, but we know Carmelo Anthony in real life doesn't have that either. So that's interesting to see. In terms of the injuries, so he's had a couple of minor injuries, but nothing too major. So that's probably why he missed a handful of games. So yeah, a pretty strong season from Carmelo Anthony. So how's that replicated to the Pistons and how they performed on the court? So for those of you who probably saw me scanning through quickly when we were looking at Darker Vintage, may have picked up on that the Pistons actually won 61 games in their first season with Carmelo Anthony as a rookie. So no surprise. I mean, they do have a pretty amazing starting five. So yep, a good season from them. 61 wins is nothing to be too pessimistic about. Really, it's pretty awesome to get 61 wins as a team. So let's have a look at the playoffs in terms of how they got on. So we get to the playoffs around about here, it looks like. Yep. So they played the Raptors in the first round. It looks like pretty much going through in 5 games. Nothing too major there. The Boston Celtics, it looks like they went through again in 5 games. It looks like pretty solid numbers. The Philadelphia 76ers that then played next, which will have been, I think, the Iverson Philadelphia 76ers. Yep. And how did they get on against them? Did they get through fairly straightforward? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, again in 5, it looks like. And then they played the Lakers in the finals. So in terms of game 1, they won 131-110. Carmelo Anthony was the player of the game. So if you ever want to know the impact of drafting Carmelo Anthony for the Pistons, he's coming up trumps in the finals in his first season with them. So he had a pretty strong first game. And let's go to the second game. They win again, 115-197. Carmelo Anthony, again, player of the game, with 25 points this time. So getting them one better over the likes of Gary Payton, Shaquille O'Neal. It looks like Kobe Bryant isn't there, unless I'm missing something. Unless he got injured. We'll have to have a little look at that in a minute. So it looks like they won the second game. Looks like they've won the third game as well on the road. So they went 3-0 up in the series, 124-110. But this time Ben Wallace with the player of the game. It looks like Carmelo possibly may have been injured because he's not in the rotation, it looks like. So not sure if he'll be back for game 4 for them. So game 4 they lost on the road. Yeah, it looks like Carmelo Anthony probably got injured. He didn't play in this game, but he did make the roster. Yeah, Shaquille O'Neal coming up trumps for them in this one. So that takes it to, I think, 3-1 as they go back to the Pistons, back to home, and they tie up and win. Well, they win the series 4-1 with 125-110. With Anthony must have been injured for those last few games because he didn't play. Yeah, so pretty good season for the Pistons and for Carmelo. I just want to check whether the Lakers, whether Kobe Bryant actually got injured or not. Let's have a little look. I believe it's under player profile. Okay, so Kobe Bryant broke his broke his finger, so that meant that he was out for the series. So that probably explains why we didn't see any Kobe Bryant, Carmelo Anthony matchups. But Carmelo, it's very fair to say that whilst Carmelo was in the rotation, they went unbeaten in the finals. Only when he got injured, they actually started losing games. So pretty good season for the Pistons. Drafting Carmelo Anthony, not drafting him, trading him in this, because that's what we did. But in theory, drafting him, and he pretty much helped the Pistons win the finals and become the champions of the NBA in his first season. So interesting to see how that goes as the next couple of seasons go on. Let's quickly get through the draft lottery and get to the. Let's quickly auto run it. Let's go quickly run through this and let's just see how he did in terms of the award honors as well, because that's always interesting to see. Okay, we don't really need the music for this one, guys. Right, awards. This is what we care about. Did he make any of the awards as well? So he didn't make any of the individual awards, it looks like. LeBron James won Rookie of the Year. Okay, understandable. No one else picking up anything there. In terms of the first team, no Pistons on that. Second team, Ben Wallace made the second team. Pretty good year, 19, 11 and just under 4 blocks, which is pretty crazy. Third team, no Pistons made that one. In the all defense first, no surprise, Ben Wallace made that one. And heading over to the second team, no Pistons there. In the rookie first team, okay, unfortunately he's not going to make the rookie first team because LeBron James Rookie of the Year kind of has his space. But did he make the second team? Yes, he did. Okay. So yeah, so pretty good season for the Pistons and Carmelo in the first year. We'll come back next time. Probably just have a little look once we get through the off. Okay, we're back at the start of season 2 in our what if Carmelo Anthony had gone to the Detroit Pistons rather than Darko Milicic. So let's have a little dive in and see what's happened over the off season before we sim through season 2. So interesting selection here is that the Pistons obviously didn't have their first round pick, so they picked up a couple of second rounders. They obviously had to re-sign Rasheed Wallace, so they've given him quite a big extension. And likewise, they managed to pick up Malik Rose, Bob Sura, who was actually in the trade that was completed to get Rasheed Wallace in real life and here as well. So he's re-signed back with the team. And then it looks like they picked up Bernard Robinson Jr. as a sort of another option who looks like he's gone straight to the D-League. So in terms of how the roster looks, it's a little bit of a changeover really, because the Pistons have lost Rip Hamilton, it looks like. He's gone. He was, I think, a free agent. In his place, they've picked up Jason Terry, it looks like. Let me just double check. So I'm not sure whether he was actually signed. No, he was traded for Rip Hamilton. So an interesting move there by the Pistons to actually trade Hamilton away. So he wasn't a free agent actually, to pick up Jason Terry. Guessing perhaps a bit more range at the time. Terry was a bit more of a 3-point shooter, so possibly that might be the reason. But in terms of the way that the team is actually going to line up, let's have a look. So pretty much the same team as last year, except Terry's in for Rip Hamilton. Alston was in the Deshaun Prince move. He's still in. Okur, Rose and Sura are the sort of the back end bench players that they picked up, and then Williamson and Ham are still around. So similar sort of team to the Pistons in terms of the start of season 1 minus Rip Hamilton. So we'll come back in a little while and see how we've got on, how the Pistons have progressed. But before we do that, we'll just have a quick look over at Denver just to see if Milicic is still on the roster, whether he's been traded. No, he's on the roster, and it looks like he is going to be starting this year, albeit for 14 minutes. But he's been knocked up. He looks like he's got half a star improvement as well, so he's developed over the off season. So we'll keep an eye on him as well. See you guys at the end of season 2. Okay, let's have a little look at the end of season 2 and how the Pistons have got on with Carmelo Anthony. So let's have a quick look at the transactions, see whether there are any deals that happened throughout the year. So let's have a look. So So this looks like the free agency stuff. It looks like the Pistons traded Okur for Stackhouse and a second round pick. So guessing that they were wanting a little bit more scoring at shooting guard. They then sent a strange deal. So it looks like Okur's gone to here for Stackhouse, and then they've traded Alston for Okur a day later. So interesting there. That maybe that should have just been one deal rather than two deals over the space of 24 hours. But I think what we can make from that is that basically Rafa Alston has been traded for Jerry Stackhouse in a second round pick. So some minor moves there by the Pistons throughout the season. So let's have a little look and see how Carmelo got on with this second season. So it looks like his scoring up has jumped massively to 27 points per game. I think it was around 20 at the beginning of his rookie year. His rebounds are up, his assists are up, steals and blocks are slightly up, it looks like. Let's have a little look. So he's played a similar number of games. His minutes have gone up slightly. His shooting numbers have gone up a little bit as well. So he's shooting a little bit better. Same with his free throw numbers and his 3-point shooting as well. So overall, we could probably fair to say that Carmelo is developing into be, the all-star type MVP style player that he was during this era. So that's helpful to see for our reflection, to see whether he is actually becoming as good as he is in real life. So in terms of the Pistons there, you can probably see the record there, but let's go and have a quick look and see how they got on in the standings. So 60-22, so a similar winning season that they had. So still one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. Did that reflect in terms of playoffs, I wonder? Let's have a look at the playoffs and see how they got on. So we'll scroll down here. It looks like first round they were up against the Cleveland Cavaliers, the LeBron James Cleveland Cavaliers as well, which is interesting. First time we've actually had to face them in the playoffs. So LeBron doing a bit of work there to get them into the playoffs. It looks like they went took us to 6 games. I'm guessing what's that? 2, 4, 6. Yep, 6 games, but the Pistons came through in the end. Then up against the Atlanta Hawks in the second round, and pretty much 5 games, and that was over. Then up against the Heat in what would have been, I guess, the conference finals. So it looks like they won both of their home games, the Pistons. I'm guessing Carmelo Anthony, with still some really good performances. Winning both games, then losing both games on the road, interestingly, and then winning the home game. And then losing the final 2 games of the series, losing in 7 games to the Heat, so not quite as good as last year. They lost to the Heat, which I'm guessing still got Dwayne Wade, who's obviously in his second season in the league, and Al Jefferson as well. It looks like they got Lamar Odom as well. So a pretty strong Miami Heat team, and surprisingly enough, Tayshaun Prince, who was traded there in the first season by the Pistons, because they obviously had Melo and felt that Prince wasn't needed. He's actually managed to get himself back into the finals. So let's have a little look and see how the finals went, I guess, and find out who the winner was. I'm guessing we can find that in the almanac. Maybe not. We can probably find it in the Heat's history though, can't we? So it looks like the Spurs were in the finals as well, and the Heat lost quite convincingly actually to the Spurs, lost in 5. So the San Antonio Spurs managed to get away with the championship this year. So for our Pistons, first season was a great success. It looks like other teams have come back now. This is pretty much the Spurs lineup everyone will remember from this era. It looks like they managed to trade to get Kirilenko, which is interesting. Manu Ginobili still there. Tim Duncan obviously as well. So yeah, season probably was a good season by the Pistons. Another 60-win season with Melo. So still doing pretty well. Just couldn't get the finals. Let's have a little look before we go and have a look at the awards and see how our man Darko Milicic has got on. So the Nuggets 20-62, so still down the bottom there. Did Milicic play any more minutes? So looks like his numbers are up slightly. Did he actually get some starts? Okay. So again, he spent some time down in the D-League, it looks like. And he spent some time on the Nuggets' actual rotation. Started 14 games. We kind of saw a minute ago that he was starting but not playing that many minutes. So he's only averaging 16 minutes. His shooting numbers have gone down a little bit, but it's small minutes, I guess. So yeah, Milicic not quite living up to any hype that he would have had at this time as well, even if he was on the Nuggets. And despite the fact that probably the only one he's really competing against is Nene, and and Chris Carman. So, there is an opportunity there for him to at least probably play 25 minutes in that rotation, but doesn't look like that's the case. So let's move on to the awards. Quickly get through the lottery, actually. Forgot about that. Let's get through that. And go on to the awards and see if Melo has won any awards this year. Okay, I may have accidentally just skipped the awards, but we'll quickly have a look at that once we get through this. Here we go. So in the almanac, let's have a little look and see if we can find the award winners for 2004. So Kirilenko, San Antonio, they won the championship, no surprise, MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. So he's had a pretty stonking year there. Rookie of the Year was Kevin Martin. Sixth man was Sean Howard. In terms of where the Pistons fit in, no, unfortunately Melo didn't win any awards. The only Piston there was actually Ben Wallace of Detroit in the All-Third team and the All-Defense First team. So no awards there for the second season for Melo. And we'll come back at the start of the third season. Okay, start of season 3. Let's have a look and see how the Pistons are doing now. So looks like the team has changed over a little bit now, actually. So Carmelo is still probably has probably now become the best player on the Pistons roster. The likes of Rasheed Wallace and Ben Wallace have kind of stayed where they are, but they're 31 and getting past their kind of prime now. I guess the interesting thing to pick up on here really is that there was an interesting free agency move really that happened. So you can probably see here that Chauncey Billups is no longer on the roster, and that is because if we find him, sort this by name. Where are you? So Chauncey Billups actually signed for the Magic for a pretty bumper deal, $75 million over 4 years. So this Pistons dynasty that was led by the likes of Wallace, both Wallaces, Prince, Hamilton and Billups, the team that in real life did very well and get into several finals and winning a title or two, is kind of starting to be broken up now. So interesting that's happening. You can also probably see that Carmelo Anthony actually has is actually sort of developing quite nicely. And when we look at the contracts for Carmelo, he's on his last year. So he's on his last year of what probably was his rookie contract. I mean, probably wasn't $15 million at the time, but I have to make do with this game in terms of what they assign salaries. So Carmelo's last year, under what would have been his rookie contract for the Pistons. So this could possibly be the last season we see Melo in the Pistons jersey, whether he decides to move or not. Much weaker Pistons team than we've seen the first couple of seasons. But, we'll see how it goes. I guess one of the funny things I did find that was interesting was that Jason Maxill, who was actually drafted by the Pistons in real life, ended up being drafted by the Pistons here at 28th pick in the last draft. So interesting that happened. So that's how the Pistons line up. Let's have a little look at the depth chart first before we go and have a look at Milicic. So pretty much similar sort of lineup. I mean, they're having to play Stackhouse, who's not really a point guard at the moment. So I probably expect the Pistons to make some sort of move to get a more natural point guard throughout the season, really. But pretty much similar sort of thing. I mean, the bench has changed around quite considerably. I mean, Sura's still here. Maxill's just been drafted. Ham's still here. And Dickel, who is here in the second season, but as well as Sampson. Collins is a new one they've picked up on a sort of smaller deal. So yeah, we'll see if the Pistons, can get back to a finals where they didn't last year, but they won 60 games. Let's jump over to the Nuggets and see if Milicic is still hanging around. So yes, he is, but he's been assigned no minutes whatsoever. He is well and truly at the bottom of the bench now. So I'm probably going to expect to see him in the D-League again, I would imagine, if he can go back down. Other than that, he's going to be struggling to try and get any minutes this year, it looks like. And he is on the last year of his contract as well. So we'll see where he ends up at the end of the season. But yeah, we'll come back into season 3, see how Melo gets on with his Pistons, whether he can sort of steer them with the two Wallaces to a title, or whether this team starts to become broken up. Okay, end of season 3. Let's see how the Pistons got on. Okay, right. So in terms of the roster, it looks like there's been a fair few changes. I mean, it's pretty fair to say that and Andre Barrett, Frank Williams, were not around a bit earlier in the season. So let's have a little look at the transaction history, because I think Pistons have been fairly active. It looks like. So they're the free agency ones. It looks like, okay, there's a couple of trades. It looks like Dickel, Maxill, who they drafted, Surratt and Harris have gone to the Trailblazers for Theo Ratliff and a second round pick. So it looks like they made that move to try and get Theo Ratliff, really, who I'm guessing is just a pretty solid player. Yeah. But interesting, I'm guessing he's been coming off the bench for them, the 32-year-old. So interesting they've moved, a young piece in Maxill to probably try and get a veteran player in to help them in terms of their playoff run and season run, really. So obviously the main man we care about is Carmelo Anthony, and again he's had a really good points boost. He's now averaging 33.5 points per game, so he is becoming Premier Carmelo Anthony for the Pistons. His minutes are up slightly, but his numbers have just skyrocketed. His field goals are down, probably because he's taking more shots. Free throws are up. So yeah, pretty strong season again by Carmelo. I mean, I'll be amazed if he's not in the MVP race with what he's averaging here. And yeah, let's have a little look and see how the actual Pistons got on in the season. So yeah, as we kind of expected, a bit of a decline. They didn't win 60 games, which is the first time under Carmelo they've not won under 60 games. So they're now 50-32. So they're not one of the premier teams really in the conference anymore. Sort of looks like they've come in as a fifth seed. So falling back to the likes of the Heat and the Cavaliers. So the Cavaliers obviously is LeBron James, the Heat's Dwayne Wade, and the Raptors I think have got Chris Bosh. So in terms of players drafted around this era, in the same draft as Carmelo, the Pistons have taken a step back. So that dynasty's not particularly happened at the minute. But let's go and have a little look in terms of the playoffs and see how they got on. So let's go down here. Let's have a look. Right. So it looks like they had their first series against the Celtics, splitting the away games because they obviously didn't have home court advantage in this series, splitting the home games. And then it looks like, they lost in 7. Blimey, that's unlucky. Lost in 7 out in round 1. So the Pistons, after, if we look at Carmelo's career so far, he won a title in his first year. Second year, he got bumped at the Eastern Conference Finals. And this year, he's been bumped in round 1. So in a contract year for Carmelo Anthony, is he going to stay on the Pistons or not? Or is he thinking at this time that it's probably time to move on and try something else? I don't know, but the Pistons obviously didn't quite get where they wanted to, so they're probably in a bit of a question mark off season, I think, for them coming here. They've got Melo's obviously only 21, but the key pieces to this Pistons team: Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, 31, probably the wrong side of their career. Jerry Stackhouse again, 31. Jason Terry, 28, so he's still got a couple of years of prime left, but the rest of the rotation is looking pretty thin now. So we'll see how that happens and how that goes out. Let's have a little look. I'm not sure whether it'll have the history up here yet. We might have to quickly go through to the actual off season to get who's won. Let's quickly find that. That's the award winners, champions. Here we go. So it looks like the San Antonio Spurs have won back-to-back champions, beating Cleveland, LeBron James' Cleveland, in 7 games in the finals. So San Antonio is still, a powerhouse in real life at this time, and a powerhouse here in this sim through. So yeah, interesting. Let's have a little look at the awards. I'll quickly get through the draft lottery because Pistons are not in that clearly. So let's get through to the awards. Okay, so in terms of the awards, Ben Wallace made Defensive Player of the Year. No surprise that LeBron James was the actual MVP. I mean, David Lee, Rookie of the Year. Interesting. Jameer Nielsen, 6th man. Let's have a look. Has Carmelo made any awards yet? Because he hasn't actually made any of the All-League teams yet. So he hasn't made the first team, obviously, because LeBron James MVP is there. But he has made the All-League second team this year. His numbers obviously are much better this year. He's had a really good season personally, I guess, and it's being reflected here. And Ben Wallace obviously in the all-second team as well. So it looks like they're the two key players for the Pistons at the moment. Ben Wallace made the all-first team on defense. Theo Ratliff actually made the all-defense second team. So probably one of the reasons why the Pistons traded to get him was that defense. And then we've got the rookies, Chris Paul coming in. Surprising that Chris Paul didn't win Rookie of the Year. It was David Lee, so that's probably a bit of an upset. Deron Williams and Andrew Bogut as well. So that moves us on to the off-season. We'll get through that again as we did for the other couple of seasons, and we'll be back with season 4 and whether Carmelo Anthony stays with the Pistons or not, because this is he is a free agent now. He can move wherever he wants. We'll see what happens. Okay, let's have a little look at the start of season 4 in this What If series. Right, let's have a look. So we all knew that Carmelo Anthony was in the last year of his contract, so he was a free agent. And I guess the big news really is that the series is not over. He is still in Detroit. It looks like he has signed a extension of some sort. So let's have a quick look at that. Where is he? Okay, yep. So he signed a pretty sizable 5-year extension. Yep. So pretty much this is Carmelo's team now. If there was any doubt of that before, it definitely has been validated now. So in terms of the rest of the rotation, it looks like there's been quite a transition over the off-season. So let's have a look and see what's happened here in the transaction history. So yeah, Carmelo signed a pretty whopper $156 million extension over 5 years. They then followed it up by giving Kerry Kittles $14 million a year. Okay, interesting. A 32-year-old who probably is past his prime. A pretty good defender though. So still trying to bring in shooting guards. And then a couple of minimum deals, Damon Jones and Menvendenko as well as bringing in some, basically looks like just some 1-year deals. So in terms of the roster, let's have a look. So Carmelo Anthony probably is the real only star left on the team. Rasheed Wallace is still around, albeit at 32 years old. Surprisingly enough though, it looks like Stackhouse is still here, but it looks like Ben Wallace has moved on. So let's quickly try and find out where he has ended up. Let's have a little look. So Ben, where are you? So he has gone to the Jazz. Okay. So he signed a 4-year, $90 million extension, or not extension, a signing to go to the Jazz. So this Pistons team is definitely lost a lot of very good players. I mean, the only real sizable guy we said is Rasheed Wallace. The rest is pretty much bench rotation guys now. I mean, Kerry Kittles and Stackhouse, I'm not sure how that's going to work out. Two shooting guards who look to be fairly similar in ability. We'll see how that pans out. So that's the Pistons for season 4. Let's have a little look at Darko Milicic and see if he's still on the Denver Nuggets roster. And we can see he has not. So Darko Milicic was obviously also in his in free agency. So he looked like he was going to possibly move. He hadn't played many minutes for the Denver Nuggets in this series and this what if so far. So let's just quickly see if we can find him and work out what has actually happened to him. So he has gone to the Hawks. And at this point, he signed a 2-year, $80 million extension, which is kind of surprising considering he hasn't really played much NBA action in this what if scenario. So the Hawks obviously still feel that he has some potential there. But main focus for us really is the Pistons and Carmelo. So yeah, I mean, much changed team. Let's go to the end of the season and see how this Pistons team has performed. Okay, end of season 4. Let's have a look and see how the Pistons have got on with Carmelo. So let's have a look. So interesting. It looks like there's been a pretty fundamental transition here in terms of how the Pistons have been doing. To say that it's been a dramatic come down from the past 3 previous seasons is probably an understatement. So, I mean, you can just see here by the quality of team. But Carmelo is still here. He's tore his AMCL back in March, which meant that he is out for a considerable length of time. So, the biggest injury that Carmelo has had since he joined the league, really. But his numbers have looked pretty good despite the limited number of games he played. He only managed 57 this year. His numbers still strong, so he still is performing at a real excellent level. But obviously the injury impact has probably changed the way the Pistons have taken this season, I think. So obviously we can probably see that there's no Rasheed Wallace anymore. So why is that? Where did he go? Let's have a look. Right. So he got traded to the Denver Nuggets for Josh Childress, Dion Glover, and a second round pick. So the Pistons clearly basically trying to cash in on Rasheed Wallace. He had a team option, I think, for next year of about $19 million. So looking at Josh Childress possibly to fill that void. I mean, he's actually done okay, to be fair, for the Pistons, it looks like, in terms of numbers. But, I mean, this hasn't really reflected in wins, as you can probably see. But let's have a look at the standings. I mean, the Pistons here have gone from a 60-win team to a 50-win team to now to a 17-win team. Probably due to the Carmelo injury. I mean, they've lost their franchise player for a good chunk of the season. But even before that, this team was in the down and doldrums of the Eastern Conference. So, first time with Carmelo that the Pistons have not made the playoffs. A bit of a transition year, I would say. Let's have a look at the contracts. So, yeah, pretty much they're dumping a lot of contracts for next year. So, not sure what they're actually going to do. So, it looks like majority of the guys will be off the books. Kerry Kittles, with that strange 2-year, $28 million free agency signing, is still going to be there. But, you know, they've cut 40 odd million out of the cap for next year. So maybe the Pistons are targeting a key free agent. I don't know. In terms of how the league ended, let's have a look and see if we can see that. The champions. So the San Antonio Spurs went back to the finals, but it looks like this time they didn't win. The Miami Heat came out on trumps and sort of winning the finals. Let's have a quick look at their roster. So Rip Hamilton is there now. He's still going. Pretty much same sort of thing. Dwayne Wade is obviously their main superstar. And it looks like Al Jefferson is still there and Lamar Odom. So a very similar Heat team that's been around for several years now, finally winning a championship for Dwayne Wade. And before we move on to the next season, let's have a quick look at the Hawks, and in particular Mr. Milicic, who looks like his actually numbers are not too bad. 9.3 and 5 rebounds. He started 75 games this year for the Hawks. So it's his first season really that he's played a good number of minutes, 24, and he started. So he's been in the starting rotation for the Hawks. I mean, a 36 and 46 Hawks. So, you know, a team that didn't make the playoffs, but obviously they're trying to justify paying him his significant salary that they were giving him, which was, let's have a little quick look and see if we can check that, which was about, $8 or $9 million a year. So, you know, he's in starter level money. So yeah, good to see Milicic actually getting some minutes, but I guess very similar to how he went in real life, really, that he kind of got benched quite a lot, chucked around the league to several different teams, and then the Timberwolves, I think, gave him a little bit of a run, and he kind of didn't do it for them, and then he kind of faded out of the league by then. But, you know, he's got a start this year. He put up okay numbers. He's still got a contract for next year, which I guess is interesting. But in terms of the Pistons, I guess the focus in terms of the offseason is going to be what on earth are they going to do? Because they're 17 and 65. They've got some cap room. Let's have a look. We've got the draft lottery, where they are going to be the second seeded team possibly in terms of percentage. So let's just quickly see how the draft goes for them, whether they drop or not. So no, they are dropping from second to fourth in the next draft, which means that let's have a look at what sort of player they might be possibly targeting. So this is the Kevin Durant draft. I mean, blimey, if they'd got the first round pick, we could have had a Durant and Carmelo Anthony roster here. But it looks like they're probably going to end up with someone like Marc Gasol or Mike Conley or something. So yeah, probably going to finally get another decent player to put alongside Carmelo. Now that obviously likes of Billups, Hamilton, Prince and the Wallaces have kind of moved on. So we'll come back at the start of the off-season for season 5 and see what's happened to the Pistons. Can they rebuild from a 60 and 50 win team with one championship to now a 17 and 65 team? Okay, we're back at the start of season 5. Let's have a little look and check how the Pistons have done. So we knew they had a high pick, which was pick 4 in the draft, and they subsequently went and took Marc Gasol with that pick, which is probably, in my opinion, a good selection. You know, they missed out on Kevin Durant, who went number 1 overall, no surprise. But, you know, a good young centre to pair with Carmelo, who is still out for 150 days. But, you know, looking at his ratings, he is definitely in the peak of his power now at the moment. 23 years old. He's been in the league for 4 years now. And, you know, to add Marc Gasol to him is certainly going to help them this year. And then the Pistons kind of moved into the off-season and into free agency with about $44 million in salary to throw around, really. And to say that they fluffed the line a little bit would be an understatement. So let me just put it this way. In terms of who they managed to sign, they signed Sasa Vucevic for $12 million roughly a year, who is an atrocious defender at shooting guard, and in my opinion, he's probably going to get knocked out of the rotation by Kerry Kittles, who is a much better defender. So I'm not sure why they're throwing, you know, a combined $26 million at both of them in shooting guard. They still have not addressed the atrocious point guard situation, which basically consists of Damon Jones, Tyrone Lue, and Gennaro Pargo, all pretty much the same type of player in that they play no defense and should be a backup point guard in this league. In terms of other positions, they managed to get Turkoglu, who they paid again $12 million to, and you know he's a good player. If he plays power forward for them, probably will work out okay. But you know he's currently pegged to play the same position as Carmelo Anthony, so I have no idea how that's going to work. I mean, in terms of the rotation, he's not even scheduled to necessarily play when Anthony comes back, I imagine, because Childress is going to get bumped out by Anthony. I mean, Turkoglu, a 6'10" shooting guard, really? Is that really going to work? I mean, this is just a really strange team now. Anthony and Gasol are going to have to really play to an excellent level for this team to stand any chance of making the playoffs this year, especially when Anthony is out for 150 days, so basically half of the season. So yeah, that's the Pistons for us now. I think we'll see how it goes this year, but I mean, if it's another terrible season, we'll probably check how they do, have a little look at the draft, have a little look at the off-season next year, and we might well wrap up our what-if scenario at this point, because the general manager of the Detroit Pistons has done a terrible job of rebuilding this team, in my opinion. So they're not going to be anywhere near a title contender for quite a while. Anyway, let's have a jump over and check out our man, Mr. Milicic, as well, the other man in the trade. So he's still at the Hawks. He's got one more year left on that 2-year deal that he signed. He has developed quite a lot over the off-season, so he's now at his potential. His defensive ability is looking really good. So he's actually whilst he's not as good as Carmelo Anthony, he's actually developed into basically a specialist defensive centre in the league. So, he's well worth that $9 million contract now. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised, So he is the starting centre and he's playing pretty good minutes for them now. So, yeah, I mean, Milicic, whilst Anthony is clearly the better player, now he seems to have found his feet a little bit in Atlanta and getting some solid minutes. Right, so we'll sim through the season. We'll have a look and see how the Pistons look at the end of this season. I will be very, very surprised if they are a championship team, and very, very surprised if they're a playoff team at this point. They have to really make some drastic moves to support Gasol and Carmelo Anthony at this point. And like I said, if it ends up that they're probably terrible and their pick looks like they might get someone good, we might do another season. But if we come to that end of off-season really and start of season 6 and this team is pretty much the same, we might well end the what-if scenario here and recap in terms of how Carmelo has done as a Piston. And season 5 has been wrapped up here. As we've just touched on, Carmelo Anthony was out for most of the season with an injury. It was the torn MCL that basically knocked him out. I kind of thought it'd be half the season, but from looking at his player stats, it seems like it's been more than 3/4 of the season that he was out for. However, when he did come back, he did come back with a bang. I mean, still putting up astronomical numbers. 36 minutes per game, 34 points per game, 5 assists, 7 rebounds, a block and a steal. So he's probably come back as a better all-round player, surprisingly enough for the Detroit Pistons. But that was kind of as good as the season got for the Pistons. Marc Gasol has had a pretty solid rookie season, 16-8 and 1.5 blocks. But in terms of the team record, you can see it up here. They finished 23 and 59, so well out of the playoffs. Not really anywhere near a contender at this stage, but they did make some interesting moves. We just quickly checked the transaction history. So we did touch on in the beginning of the season that Turkoglu, who the Pistons signed for quite a sizable contract, was a weird decision because when Carmelo Anthony came back, he was no longer probably going to play. They originally were lining him up at shooting guard for a 6'10" small forward, power forward. Really is a strange decision. But they managed to get a bit of a deal done. They managed to send him to the Miami Heat in exchange for what was basically a bit of a salary dump and 2 young rookies in Adam Morrison and Maguire. Well, not rookies on rookie contracts really, rather than actual rookies at this stage. Not really any players who are going to actually sort of sing about really, just bench players to be honest with you. So yeah, the Pistons not playoff bound. Pretty much another rubbish season, only improving by a few wins from last season. Granted that Melo was out for quite a long period of time. So yeah, that's kind of where the Pistons ended up. Let's see who the actual winner was in the actual season. So Cleveland finally got the title, but LeBron James's first title in this What If series, beating Memphis Grizzlies, which is interesting. So let's have a quick look and see who. Just out of interest, who was on the Memphis Grizzlies roster. So they've got Kevin Garnett, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Okafor, who is actually out for quite a considerable amount of time. So yeah, very front court heavy team. Got Battier still, Stephen Jackson actually as well. So yeah, this is kind of the Pistons have had a bit of an interesting turn here in this What If series. I think fair to say probably the first season was the most successful season for Carmelo Anthony. He won a title in his rookie season, and that Pistons team looked pretty dominant. And ever since then, they've kind of gone in this sort of slowly downward trajectory. Really, first season was good. Second 2 seasons were pretty solid. 60 wins again, but losing in the conference finals. 50 wins and being bumped out, I think, again in round 2 possibly. And then sort of basically that trajectory has carried on going down. So I think we're going to end the What If series here. So how do we summarise this really? Carmelo Anthony is just a crazy good all-star player. I mean, even in this Let's Play What If series, he still is going to probably end up being a Hall of Famer, probably be in the top 10 at least for scoring record if he keeps this up for he's got probably another 10 years in him at this stage. So yeah, Carmelo Anthony still a fantastic player as he was in real life. In terms of the Pistons' impact, when you compare it to how the Pistons actually did do in real life, I think they made a double check. They obviously won the one title, which was in when was it? It was in 2004. So yeah, okay. So fair enough. The in this What If series, the Pistons have won the same number of titles. I mean, they did get back to the finals in 2005 in real life. So in terms of probably the real life Pistons, surprisingly enough, have probably actually performed better than they did, not drafting Carmelo Anthony and taking Darko Milicic. Although, probably we could argue that if the AI GM had been slightly competent, they probably would have won at least one more title, I think. They've kind of made some questionable decisions by the end of Carmelo's rookie year. So yeah, that kind of ends the What If series. I think we'll just finish up and we'll just double check to see how Milicic has done. So, yeah, the other side of the transaction. So he's become, like I said at the beginning of the season, he's become a pretty solid starting sort of 25 minutes per game defensive centre. I mean, he's not nowhere near Carmelo's level, but he developed eventually. It seems like Atlanta, he's kind of found his niche. He started the majority of games, apart from when he was out injured, I believe. So yeah, I think in terms of summarising the What If, What if Carmelo Anthony had been drafted by the Pistons and Darko Milicic had not gone there? I think it's fair to say the Pistons probably would have had a longer period of probably being a playoff team, a good playoff team with a contention for 3 or 4 seasons. But yeah, past that, who knows what could happen? I mean, this team really needs someone to come in and completely gut out the rotation, really, and just keep Marc Gasol and Carmelo Anthony and hope they can get, in the draft. I think this is the Russell Westbrook, Kevin Love, Derrick Rose draft. So hopefully they can, if they picked up someone there, they could have a big 3 and possibly win maybe another title in the next sort of 5 years or so if they do it right. But we're not going to stay there and watch that. We're going to end it here. I hope you've enjoyed this series of the first of what will be several in what if scenarios for NBA history and NBA law. If you have any ideas of what if questions we could ask throughout the whole length of the NBA, let me know and we'll get a series going. I've got a few ideas of what's coming up next. The idea that these are going to probably be a regular thing once a week for a little while, for like 4 or 5 weeks, and then depending on if we've got any other things, we'll bring it up. But if you enjoyed the series, comment below, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. It always helps the channel, and we'll see you on the next series and the next episode of that.